Hello and welcome to the Passenger Seat Podcast, a podcast designed to fill your passenger seat with chat about classic cars, all recorded from my 1968 Morris Minor Peggy. I'm Becca and today I am at Wymondham Windmill, which is about halfway between where I live and Derby, where Ray Newell of the Morris Minor Owners Club lives. And we've met up on this absolutely grisly, horrible November day to record a podcast together. Ray has been involved with the club for over 40 years and is coming up to stepping back from his role with the Morris Minor Owners Club. And it seemed, with the 75th anniversary of the year and Ray's name being so synonymous with Morris Minors, that it would be a good opportunity to meet with him, talk about his experiences with having Morris Minors, of having other cars, how he got to be in the secretary of the Morris Minor Owners Club, and everything that's kind of comes along with that. So he's very kindly come along to meet me here. We're going to have a chat about his classic cars and everything, and hopefully shine a bit more light on the name behind loads of Morris Minor publications, the name behind so much of what the Morris Minor Owners Club has achieved over the last few years, and generally just celebrate his contributions to the club as he moves towards stepping back and finally properly retiring, I guess. So without further ado, I'm going to invite Ray to come and climb into the back seat of a Morris Minor, probably something he's not done for a little while, and have a chat with me. So let's get on with the podcast. Okay, so we're now joined by Ray, who you might know from the Morris Minor Owners Club, or from your many publications about Morris Minors.
Yes, there are quite a few.
Yeah, we've got some here. How long have you been involved with Morris Minors?
I started with the Morris Minors. Well, my first car was a Morris Minor.
Yeah.
And that was in 1975.
Okay.
And I had a hankering after a Morris Minor for a long time because I'd always been told that it was a good, solid, dependable car. And so I took that advice.
Yeah.
And so my first car was a 1964 two-door saloon. Not in the best condition, I have to say.
No, yeah.
But it saw me through. And then I followed that up with an almost, it was a 4-year-old Morris Minor when I bought it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like it just come out of the showroom.
Wow.
And I kept that for quite a while. And used it as everyday transport. It's really, I should never have sold it. We often say that,
yeah.
But really I should never have sold it. It went to a good home, and then I had a dalliance with Triumphs for a long time, and I bought Triumph 1300.
Yeah.
I had Toledos.
How did they compare?
Well, they were much more comfortable cars to be in. The Triumph 1300 was a lovely car, really nice car, very comfortable, and so on. But the real passion for the Morris Minors came almost by chance. I called in at a petrol station near where I worked, and there was a car in the showroom which immediately caught my attention. So I went in and saw the proprietor. Now, at that time, I was working at a secondary school nearby.
Okay.
One of my jobs then was to help place students on placements, and so I knew the garage proprietor because we'd had some students who were going there for their work experience.
Yeah.
So I knew him, and he when I expressed an interest in it, he said, "Well, yes, of course I'll sell it to you." But at that time, money was very tight.
Yeah.
There was no way that I could pay, and it was £800.
Yes.
A bargain these days.
Yeah, but in period, that's...
But it was still expensive.
Yeah.
And he said to me, well, it's doing no harm where it is. It attracts a lot of attention to the garage.
Yeah.
He said, if you want to pay me £50 a month...
That's good of him. Yeah.
That sounded like a good plan.
Yeah.
And then, so he let me go to the garage and polish it and look after it, and occasionally take it out for a little drive round and whatever.
Keep things moving and everything.
And then eventually I was able to get it. Now that car was the registration was NRR84, and I had that car for a very long time, and that's what brought me into the club, because
so
it was an older car. It was a Series MM,
yeah,
1952. It had 22,910 miles on it when I bought it.
And what year was that?
That was in 82.
Yeah.
81, 82.
So it would have been 30 years old at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing was, the car had actually belonged to an ex-military person, a naval person. And he had it in what he called battleship grey. To you and me, it was Clarendon grey.
Yeah.
And it was his pride and joy, and every detail of what had been done to that car was recorded in.
Oh, amazing!
It was a fantastic car to find, and of course it was on the circuit for the Morris Minor Runners Club for a long time. I actually campaigned it in concourse and so on. And so that's really where the love of the Morris Minors developed.
And that's that kind of switch from, like, when you first got your Morris Minor, it would have been like a cheap, usable 10-year-old car that was like somebody today buying like a Ford Fiesta from the early 2000s. And then by the time you came back to them after the brief time with Triumphs, they'd switched to becoming kind of desirable classic cars.
Yes, and the car became quite well known. But it was through the ownership of that car that I then got involved with the car club. Yeah. And then the rest, as I say, is history. But there was a lot involved in that. And then I joined the local branch to start with. Became known in the local branch. Was encouraged to make an application to join the national committee. And my first involvement with the club was as an events secretary, if you like, or events organizer, I think was the official title. And so that got me involved in organizing the national rally way back. And we went to such places as Woburn Abbey. Then we moved to Weston Park, and we had some fantastic rallies at Weston Park. I could tell you some stories about the events there, absolutely incredible. Really, with two-day events, but the biggest one we had was, can't remember what year it was, but the biggest one we had 1,400 cars. Wow. So that's in those days. I mean, and that was phenomenal. It really was. I mean, that wasn't the biggest, because the biggest event that we ever had was at Blenheim Palace. We had over 2,000 there. I wasn't involved in organising that one, but that's a sort of scale of things. When the Morris Minor rallies are still big. They're big events. But they're of a different ilk, really, to what they were back then. And of course, moved on from that to become secretary of the club.
And how long have you been secretary now?
I've been secretary since 1983.
So you've done your time.
I'm celebrating 40 years as secretary this year. And I'm proud to do so. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's a big thing in terms of you've achieved so much over those 40 years, and now coming to the end of that and having to step back and enjoy the cars again, I suppose.
Well, hopefully, yes. And when you say enjoy the cars again, in not necessarily in preparation for that, but the passion, if you like, for the cars is still there, in the sense that I've recently restored a Traveller, and I've gone slightly away from my traditional view of having a car that's to the original sort of specification, like the 1949 Series MM Tourer that I've got. That is pretty apart from the Alto overhead conversion, putting seat belts in for safety, putting indicators on for safety as well. Apart from that, it's pretty much a standard car. the Traveller is slightly different in that I've sort of uprated it a bit in terms of the interior and so on, and I'm hoping to be able to use that next year, and enjoy the car again,
and that's
probably use it as everyday transport for at least part of the year, I would think.
And I think that's the beauty of, even though there's so many like similar looking Morris Minors, they all have different uses. Like, you couldn't realistically daily a 1949 or a 1951 or whatever, but you've got the option to have a Traveller and to then make a couple of modifications to it that make it such a usable classic, like I do with Peggy.
Yes, absolutely. And I haven't been able to do that. I'm sure I could have done, but I'm now at the stage where the car's undergone a complete restoration, and it's looking nice.
Yeah,
it's an attractive car to see, and it's a usable car, and so I'm not going fantastic distances in it. Mm-hmm. So for pottering around home and everyday use, I'm hoping to do that.
And there's nothing better, really, because little pottering around and stuff like that, a Traveller offers so much space. More practical than a lot of modern SUVs or things like that for space, and your miles per gallon and all of that are pretty decent. I mean, I've got 44 miles per gallon out of Peggy before,
right?
And so you can really use them.
So that's something that I'm looking forward to.
Yeah.
The other thing, of course, as you will be well aware, and anybody else who owns a Morris Minor will be well aware, when you go out on your journey, wherever it is, you have to allow some extra time for being stopped by people who say, "Oh, I like your car," or "Oh, we used to have one of those in the family," or whatever it is. So you've still got, with the public, you've still got that association with the cars, and that says a lot for the Morris Minor, its history.
Absolutely, because it's the 75th year to this year.
That's right.
And for it to still have that recognition, and you're absolutely right, make time. I stopped off, we're in Wymondon Windmill at the moment, and I stopped off here on my way back from a committee meeting a few months ago, and I stopped off in the little antique shop, and I was there for ages. Didn't see as much of the antique shop as I wanted before they closed, but I spent ages talking to the man who owned it, because I'd parked Peggy outside, and he wanted to know loads about it, and even though he wasn't a car person, he appreciated the Morris Minor.
That's exactly the same. I mean, I have to say, when I take the 49 Tourer out, people actually step back and say, we had a more modern one. We used to have a split screen, but we had a more modern. But that one's different, and it's the whole the low headlights and whatever. And then when you say, "How old is it?" and you tell them how old it is, and they're just amazed.
Yeah.
And you said, and the condition of it, and that. I mean, but you get a certain buzz yourself out of that.
Yeah.
And the fact that you're sharing the experience of your ownership of the car.
Yeah.
That means a lot.
I think that's exactly like the concept of custodianship, really, isn't it? We don't really own classic cars. You're a custodian to them, and so when people want to talk to you about them, there's an importance about sitting there and having that conversation.
There is.
Because there might be something that sparks in them that they then want one as well, or they're at least interested, or they'll tell someone about the conversation they had with you, and then that might pass on to someone else.
Yeah. Well, going back to the NRR84, the 52 Series MM, I had that car on the stand at GMEX in Manchester. Mm-hmm. And it was on the stand, and of course, sometimes the stands are barriered off and people can't. And this gentleman came up and he said, "Are you the owner of that car?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Could I ask a favour?" He says, "Could I sit inside that car?" I said, "Of course you can." So I let him go in, and I just left him to it.
Yeah.
And there were tears running down his.
Oh, bless him. Yeah.
And he says, "This takes me back." He says, "It brings back memories of my dad and all the rest of it." He says, "I'm just sitting here." Of course, they've got leather seats and so on. He says, "The smell of the leather seats and all of that." just there was just that nostalgic feel to the whole thing.
Yeah, I've seen my dad doing the exact same thing with all of his cars over the years. And for a while, it was primarily like children. He'd be like, if kids were showing an interest in the car, he'd be like, absolutely, get in the car, press the horn, have a look at stuff, kind of thing. But more recently, I think because me and my sister have got into the cars, he's now inviting like 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds, the parents of the kids. Yes. Because the realisation that actually they're the ones with the money to buy the car now. So if we get them interested and engaged with the car as well as the kids, then they might be tempted to go, oh, well, actually, we could come along to these things that we're at anyway with a car and have a nice family picnic and all of those sorts of things. And even the older people that then have the memories and stuff sitting in them, I think is important as well.
Yeah. Well, of course, that brings us around to the Young Members Register and so on, and the work that you're doing to sort of encourage younger people and create that interest. And that's vital, of course, because it's the next generation that are going to continue that legacy that's there. Yes, the cars will, lots of them are restored to fantastic condition. You can see that Morris Minor is going to continue for years to come, but it needs a new generation of owners to sort of take on board, the upkeep of it and to keep those traditions going.
Yeah, absolutely. So, obviously, people know you for Morris Minors, but you've got an interest in other cars, Triumphs. What else have you got in your personal collection?
Well, at the moment, one of the cars that I'd always had an interest in, and this, I'll tell you how far back it goes. It goes back to being sitting in the sixth form.
Oh, wow, okay.
In the sixth form with two of my friends at that time at school in the sixth form. Both their parents ran agencies for one for BMC, and the other one was a Mercedes.
Okay.
And so we used to pore over car brochures that were current at the time. So you're talking late 60s.
Yeah.
And one of the cars that really interested me was the Hillman Imp.
Yeah.
And so we used to get, and then we'd look at the brochures, and then of course there was the different variants of the Hillman Imp, and you had the Singer
Chamois and the Sunbeam Stilettos and all of that. Yeah.
And I was always interested from that time.
Yeah.
But it did. Obviously, the Morris Minors came first.
Yeah.
But I had an opportunity to purchase a Singer Chamois, a 1968, and it had belonged to a motoring journalist called Russ Smith, who worked for various magazines, and he was actually editor, I believe, of Popular Classics magazine, which ran for a period of time. And what in his ownership, in his stewardship of the magazine, he acquired the car that I currently own. And when I used to talk to him, because he also had an interest in Morris Minors, I used to talk to him, and I always said to him, if you ever decide to sell that car, I said I would like to have first refusal. Yeah. And true to his word, he approached me at the NEC one year and said, I'm thinking of getting rid of the Singer. Yeah. And I've had it ever since. And it's a lovely car. It's a beautiful car to drive. It's different again to a Morris Minor.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I've done a comparison video and podcast on the two. So I've driven Dad's one and compared it to driving Peggy. Yeah. And they're in period, a similar type of price bracket. They've got the same kind of number of seats, same kind of appealing to the same sort of people. Although I think a Chamois would probably have been a family's second car in a lot of cases, whereas a Morris Minor might have been somebody's only car. Yes. But they drive so differently, and it's a completely different experience.
It really is. I mean, the gearbox is so. I find the gearbox is really precise on the Singer. There's not much movement and so on. But it is and it's very comfortable. And of course, you've got the added little bits and pieces of the walnut trim and so on. The seats are much more comfortable.
Yeah.
As you say, they're very different vehicles.
Yeah, for something that if you looked at them and said, okay, well, it's a 1960s kind of small family car. Mm-hmm. No, they both fall into that category, but two completely different things in what they offer.
Yes.
And drive so differently, and of course engines in a completely different place, and so it sounds different when it's driving, and
I really enjoy that. And then I thinking towards like a modern classic. I recently, well, actually not that recent now, because I must have had it about 7 years. I bought a Chrysler Crossfire Roadster.
Which is what you've come in today.
And that's what I'm in today. And that is a totally different. So you get the whole spectrum of different vehicles, but they all bring you a different sort of a different driving experience. I mean, that I use that for longer journeys and so on. But I have actually been forced into using it as an everyday car during the course of this year, and I used it sort of consistently for about 2 or 3 months. But again, it's in very good condition, and I want to keep it that way. But it's a totally different thing. So you get different feeling for the cars, and of course there's always enthusiast clubs for all of these cars. But again, it's interesting as well to see how the clubs run, how they're organised. I mean, for instance, the Chrysler, they started off and there was a small fee when the club was started. Now it's all online. There is no fee. They organise the events, and that's mainly what they do. Yes, there are forums and various other things that you can sort of go on, but it's a totally different experience in terms of getting impressions from the Imp Club, to getting minor matters from the Morris Minor Runners Club.
And the Singer Owners Club as well, with their magazine as well.
And all of that. They all the enthusiasm is there for all of them. But it's shared in different ways, and I think which is quite unique.
What's also interesting is even seeing a publication change hands, because obviously the Singer Owners Club, the magazine's been done by Gifford for probably close to the same amount of years as you've been in the Morris Minor Owners Club. And now John Simister's doing it, and it's interesting to see kind of, again, same enthusiasm for creating a publication for the people that are enthusiastic about the same cars as you, but how it's going to be gradually changed and different, and have different ideas come into it.
Yeah, very much so. And talking of publications, one of the things which the Morris Minor Runners Club members are going to enjoy this month. Right.
So this is November. This is recorded.
Yes.
It's probably everyone will have received their copies and everything by the time this goes out. So
Yeah. Well, it will be interesting to see what the feedback is. Because it was the 75th anniversary, which we've mentioned, and we had that superb event at Chateau Impey, which has been, roundly and very well received.
Absolutely.
Roundly welcome, very well received. We've had lots of plaudits from it, from the press, but more especially from the members and those who attended. The idea was, right at the beginning of the year, from a club point of view, that we would want to share something of the history of the Morris Minor in a special publication for all the members. So this is an additional publication that goes out with the normal November-December magazine. And we've rather cheekily changed the title, because the title of the club magazine, as you know, is minor matters.
Yeah.
What we've changed it to is minors matter.
Yeah.
Okay. And so this time there's a trip through all the decades that the Morris Minor's been in production.
Yeah.
And so on, and a nostalgic look at different aspects of what was happening in society at that particular time.
Yeah.
As well. So it will be interesting to see what the reaction will be.
Yeah.
To that.
Because I got a sneak peek of that when I came up to Derby for the
Mm-hmm.
committee meeting, in terms of like having a look through some of the planned pages, and it looks so interesting, and I think a really special thing to have produced.
Hopefully it will be sort of something that people will want to not just read and but will want to keep as a memento of a landmark year, really.
Absolutely.
In the history of the Morris Minor.
Yeah.
We've been fortunate this year in that we've been able to do some of the things. We've been able to put the first and the last Morris Minor saloons together.
Yeah.
And
the last saloon being one that the club themselves have restored.
Right.
So obviously was there because of work that the club has done. And
well, interestingly, there's another publication which is due very soon.
Yeah.
And that is based around the Last Saloon.
Okay.
Because as you will remember, the Last Saloon came into the possession of the club around about 2016, and there was a big debate about what should happen to it.
Yeah.
Because it was in an awful state.
Yeah.
It really was. I mean, had it been any other Morris Minor, I don't think it would have survived. I really don't.
No. Yeah.
Because the amount of time, effort, and everything that needed to go into it. But the club has been fortunate in that it had a very generous bequest from a former member. And so some of the funds from that bequest was used to actually restore the car.
Yeah.
And of course the club took on responsibility with volunteers and so on. Yes, we had to have some professional help.
Yeah.
And for some of the bodywork repairs and all the rest of it. So that was all documented and so on. And then I was approached to see if I would like to do a publication, which is a restoration manual.
Yeah.
Not in the mode of the Haynes manuals
as
such, but one which was like you would look at it doing a restoration of a car, you would record it.
Yes.
You would record different aspects of it, and you would give helpful hints and tips. To
things that you've learned along the way.
Yeah, that's right. And so the focus for a lot of the work was based on the Last Saloon.
Oh, okay.
So really, I'm looking forward to getting my advanced copy.
Yeah.
Because what that's going to do is going to do two things. It's going to record a lot of the work that was done on the Last Saloon. So it will actually be a record of that.
Yeah.
But also it will contain a lot of helpful hints and tips from people who are, if you like, well versed in building a gearbox, building an engine, the interior trim, all different aspects of it, the electrics, fuel system, all of that.
And because the Last Saloon was so bad when it started, it's really going to be a restoration book from like the worst case scenario. So anyone who's like restoring a car is hopefully going to be, if they're in their right mind, probably a little bit further along than the Last Saloon was, so they can start at the point from the book that feels appropriate to them.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because I think if I can remember the actual words that I used, was that I was actually saying that given the very fortunate position that would-be Morris Minor owners or existing Morris Minor owners are in terms of the supply of parts,
absolutely,
and everything else, anything on a, 1949 car, you might be struggling to get original stuff and whatever. But for later models, and this was the last one, pretty much everything that you needed is available. and so that's an encouragement. So I was saying in the thing that if you can restore this one when it's in this state, then anything's possible.
Absolutely.
And so on. But I didn't just concentrate on the Last Saloon to give it a balance and a breadth because of the Morris Minor range. We've included a chapter on convertibles to sort of alert people to recognising a genuine convertible from a converted saloon. And one of the questions that frequently came up was about, well, how do I replace the headlining? Sorry, not the hood on a convertible. And so we've actually done a step-by-step illustration of how that's done. And then there's the travellers and again
the woodwork and stuff like that.
So we've done things like that, and then the commercials. How do you take a cab off the chassis and all of that sort of stuff. So hopefully there will be something in it, something for everyone. Well, I mean the books have been an interesting thing to do. I've done rather a lot of them.
Yeah.
Different for different purposes.
Yeah.
Really. Some, like the Restoration Manual, there was a traveller book which a lot of people who buy traveller will probably gravitate towards buying a traveller book. But one of the things in terms of the technical stuff is that I tend to work with people who are well versed in their particular area of expertise, and then to have them to assist with some of the technical answers so that it's as accurate as possibly can be.
Yeah.
And then there's other ones which are more along the historical lines, looking at. Some of the most enjoyable books to do were more on the history of it, how the car was advertised, all of that. Very colourful publications and so on. But there's a wide variety of stuff that I've done over the years. So there's not much left to do.
What got you into the writing of the books?
I'd always hankered after the idea of doing a book.
Yeah.
And of course I was always contributing to magazines and the club magazine in particular. That's where I got started in terms of my writing and so on. And then the opportunity came along. There was a series of books called Super Profiles, which were being done in the early 80s. Which are these
ones that we've got down here?
That's right. And the very first one was the blue one. The blue one. Yeah. This book here was my first effort. Really at doing it, and I worked alongside quite a famous, in Morris Minor's terms, quite a famous person, because I worked alongside Paul Skilleter, who did a lot of the photographs, the colour photographs for the inside of the book. And Paul, of course, wrote the Morris Minor, the World's Supreme Small Car, which at the time was really the most detailed book on the Morris Minor. So he did the photographs for this, and it encouraged me to go forward and do others, including the follow-up one,
which is on the earlier cars.
Which was on the earlier cars. These both sold well, and people keep reminding me about the pictures in the back, which not every book features the author. But when I look back at some of these pictures,
oh my gosh! And then so that's NR84.
That's the one.
So and that's on the front cover as well.
Yes.
But oh my gosh!
And that one's even worse.
That's a good pair of glasses on there. Yeah.
Oh dear, there was hair then. And people often said, "Oh, I got one of your books," and then they showed me that and said, "This is." I still recognise you from the photograph. No, it's so long ago.
Yeah.
19.
Have they updated your photos for the newer publications?
I don't think they put them in anymore. The first one I think was 1982, and the other was 1984.
Yeah.
So that's how far back it goes, really.
Yeah, so not long after you'd bought NR
that's
84,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's all good stuff. But there's a good library there.
Yeah.
For any avid collectors of Morris Minor books. I think there's 16 titles now.
Yeah. So you're coming to the end of your time on the committee and stuff with the MMOC. Mm-hmm. What do you think, like we've talked a little bit about like how car clubs all differ and stuff like that. What do you think the future is for car clubs, and why do you think they're still kind of important to have?
I think that they're vitally important. Vitally important, not just for the owners of the Morris Minors, and of course they're not just for people who own cars. They're for enthusiasts. The amount of information which is available to either would-be owners or existing owners.
Yeah.
The body of knowledge which is there within the club in terms of its previous publications, in terms of technical manuals, in terms of forums, the interchange of ideas through Facebook and various other things. Those are vital. I mean, it's changing all the time. It's developing, and I think that really future committees are going to have to have a look and adapt to the way things are going.
Yeah.
Even now, I mean, one of the things is that with the Morris Minor, which we haven't really mentioned, but which is very important, is that in the early years of the development of the Morris Minor, the emphasis was very much on exporting the cars.
Yeah.
So there's a worldwide network of enthusiasts and owners. They also have their own clubs and so on, and it's very much along the social lines. Like the UK club has its network of branches.
Yeah. Again,
vitally important, but it has more of a social element to it. Those people who living in overseas destinations and so on, who want to be part of a UK club, it's very difficult to manage the postage costs, and so the introduction of digital copies of the magazines available to people in overseas destinations is something which a lot of clubs are embracing.
Yeah.
Some are exclusively saying that for the overseas members that it's digital only, really. Yeah. So people have got to adapt to the way things are going and maintain that interest and enthusiasm for the cars. But the fact that the Morris Minor Owners Club's been going since 1976, I mean, in 2026 we'll be celebrating 50 years of the Morris Minor Owners Club. That is a landmark, really, to be celebrated.
Yeah,
it really is. But the all that information, the adaptation to making the cars more usable, upgrades and so on, not to everybody's taste. There are those who want to maintain the cars as they left the factory and so on, but to keep the hobby going and so on, not just for the Morris Minor Club but other clubs as well.
Clubs.
And I think the challenge will be to keep up to date with modern technology, to move forward. Of course, we've got the issues with fuel and various other things. I know that you've been writing in the latest magazine about
sustainable fuels and stuff like that.
Fuels, and that's something which again has got to be examined. There's lots for people to do, but at the heart of it, it's the people who own the cars and bringing them together, continue to share the enthusiasm for the cars and all the rest of it. And I think if we must make sure that we don't lose that. Yeah,
it's definitely like the socialisation aspect. I've got friends that I've made because of the cars that I would have never have crossed paths with, and the same is the case for my parents before me with their car clubs, and I've seen it with you as well with like John Fry and stuff like that. You guys would probably have never crossed paths if you hadn't bought the same car, which seems kind of arbitrary, but the car clubs are able to do that, and then the support you're then able to get is what keeps you being able to use the cars, because you've got the friends who have perhaps had cars for longer than you or whatever. And I've been very grateful for that this year with some of the stuff that's gone wrong with Peggy, in that the friends that I've made through the young members and stuff have come over from North Wales to Peterborough to help, or have come and rescued me from a little village near their house and towed me back to theirs to get it fixed and sorted, which you wouldn't get without a car club to kind of centre it.
I mean, I see that. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to have been invited to go to various branches and so on, and I have seen and witnessed occasions where it goes much further than just an interest in the car. Yes, there's a shared interest in the cars, but the support within that group of enthusiasts belonging to a specific branch, helping people with personal issues. It goes far beyond just
the help with the cars.
Far beyond. And it's lovely to see.
And I think that's the important thing, I think, for some people to come round to, is that getting involved with the car club and keeping a car club going should be about keeping those relationships an option, and to keep the space there for people to be able to build those friendships. And it shouldn't be about getting caught up in anything else. It should always be about trying to make the space better for everyone and keep the cars going.
I couldn't agree more. It's been, reflecting back on what shall we say, I think it's 42 years involved with the club itself. There's been so many highlights of different things that have been done, trips abroad, meeting up with a lot of the overseas people, the attending the classic car shows, the big national rallies and all of that sort of stuff. It's been brilliant, really. And in terms of the development of the club, we're very fortunate as a club in that we have our own premises. That there's been, we had the days when there was 14,000 members or whatever. The subscription levels may not have been as high as they are now. But I would say that some of the previous committee members and so on, in terms of their contribution, which mustn't be forgotten, and even though they served their time, did what they wanted to do, but contributed well. Prudent management enabled the income from the membership and so on to acquire the premises in Derby. That's provided a solid base for the administration of the club. Not all clubs have that. And we should be very grateful that the Morris Miners Club operates in the way that it does.
You talked there a little bit about kind of the memories that you've got. Have you got any standout memories from your years of classic ownership?
Well, I suppose it depends on how you view it. Some of the standout memories would be, if we think about the cars and the development of the cars. I was fortunate in that I was probably because I was secretary of the club and so on, fortunate to spend a lot of time with the original design team, Reg Job and Jack Daniels, and to meet up with them, get them to come along to events and so on, involve them in things like the presentation of awards and all of that sort of stuff. And I was very fortunate in that, although he was in failing health at the time, I was actually able to through Reg Job to go along and see and meet Alec Isagonis.
Wow.
He wasn't a very well man at the time, but to be able to say that, well, actually, I did meet the designer of the Morris Minor, and
the designer of so many other hugely important cars.
Yes, of course. And we had a wonderful day, morning with him, and it wasn't so much that I wasn't the focus of attention, because it was Reg wanted to meet up again with him, even though he was poorly, and but to witness them reminiscing about the various aspects of their work and so on was really good. And Jack Daniels spent a lot of time with talking about the development of the cars and all the rest of it, and some of it is reflected in the publications, their recollections of things. So that would be one standout moment, if you like. But I suppose really it's the fact that you meet so many different people, so many that you can't necessarily. I wouldn't necessarily remember every one of them. Yeah. But either through the books or being secretary of the club or whatever, a lot of people will recognise me. Yeah. But there's an instant rapport there. And it's that shared enthusiasm, isn't it? So I suppose that'll be the lasting memory, really, that the cars have brought people together, and it's usually a happy conversation that you have with them, or
I mean, even if you're moaning about something that's wrong with your car, it's usually in a jovial, happy way.
That's right. That's right. And like you said about your car, I mean, and same with me. I've got people who know that technically I'm not the best. Yeah. I've said so in when it comes to writing the technical stuff in books. I rely on other people's knowledge, expertise. I'm able
to put it into words and present it in a way.
And so there's that. But you'll always find that there'll be somebody there who will be willing to come along and help. Yeah. And I think that says a lot.
Yeah. Well, thank you ever so much for joining me on this horrible, drizzly day.
Well, it's been a pleasure. I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed talking to you.
Yeah, and in the back of a Morris Minor, which you've probably not been in the back seat of one for some time. So thank you very much for braving the back seat.
No problem at all.
So that was really special. And so nice to sit and talk to Ray for such a long period of time and get to know him a little better. We obviously have sat and recorded that, but also we went over to the cafe that's here and continued kind of chatting and things like that. It's so nice to kind of see where he is now and all the things that he's learned over the years with his involvement with car clubs, with classic cars. And hopefully you found it really interesting as well. Thank you ever so much for listening. And in the meantime, drive safely and happy motoring.